In this video, I'll be showing you step by step how to automate your own e-commerce store with the help of AI assistant agent using Voiceflow. It will be able to personally recommend products to specific users' query, providing a highly personalized product recommendation, FAQ assisting, and order tracking, and so much more. By the end of the video, I'll also be explaining a full template made by Voiceflow that you can download right now and plug it into your own Shopify store in under 20 minutes. So stick to the end of the video, and welcome to the ultimate guide of e-commerce with AI. Okay, so we are at Voiceflow at the moment. The example that we actually want to give you guys today is actually based on Venom, combat sports brand. The first thing that I want you guys to know before actually hopping into a Shopify store is that you guys need to understand the fundamentals and why we're doing things, because I've seen lots of tutorials just focus on, okay, do this, copy and paste this code, copy and paste this block, do this, build this, follow this template, done, right? But that's not how you learn, because if you just do that, you would never understand why you're doing things. And when a new problem arises, you won't know how to solve this specific problem, right? So the whole point of this really is to get your problem solving skills together. And the more creative you can be, the more adaptable you can be, the more complicated builds you guys can come up with, right? So what I'm trying to do here is really walk you through the fundamentals, because it's always the fundamentals that can actually help you. Yeah, let me go ahead. First thing you need to understand is what is a carousel. Nowadays, any e-commerce stores that do have AI support, they usually have a feature called product recommendation. So what it does is it takes a user's input. Based on that specific query, the AI will recommend an appropriate product. For example, I want a male extra large t-shirt. If something as simple as a t-shirt, obviously it's very simple, it's very, it doesn't take much time for someone to look in. But if something more nuanced, like for example, if it's a fitness brand product, someone's trying to gain weight, or they have a very certain physical condition that they need certain supplements, it can get quite tricky to navigate through the store, or like you waste the time just asking a live customer support agent. That's going to cost you both time and money. So what actually helps is if there's an AI that can, behind the scene, just think it through and recommend the appropriate product in real time for the customer, right? So that's the idea of product recommendation. And the fundamentals of using product recommendation in Voiceflow is something called a carousel. I'll show you guys what I meant by carousel. So a carousel is actually just a collection of options that you can choose from. As you can see, this is a carousel. You've got a product image, you've got a product name, and you've got a product description. You also have an action button, which is called Visit Product. When you click on Visit Product, it will redirect you to the actual product website. So this is Venom, the boxing gloves. You can choose from either the first one or the second one, right? So this is a carousel, but it's not dynamic because I set it up right. Basically, what I did was go ahead, and if you go to carousel, and if you drag carousel into the zone, you can see that there's basically two different cards, right? So you can drop your image here. You've got your card title or your variable, and you call your card description. And you've got links here, which you can upload on your own. But also what I went ahead to do is actually literally just copy and paste all the different links that the site has and upload the image and have a title and description. So I did this manually, and I add the actions, which is visit product, on my own. So this is a carousel, but it's not a dynamic carousel. The reason is because this is static, right? So I kind of have to set everything up myself. This is a manual carousel. So the idea behind this chapter, I guess, is to give you an understanding of how to actually use AI to dynamically generate these carousels based on the user's queries, right? Because we don't want to hard code this every time, because there are an infinite number of queries, possible queries. So it's basically impossible to kind of hard code or program it. So the way to do this is we need to use something called custom action. What is a custom action? If you go to developer and then you drag custom action out, you get a custom action. So a custom action is a more advanced developer block within Voiceflow that you can type your own code in. So for example, JSON. What I did here in this custom action is I named it called carousel. And the action body, if I drag in here as a JSON, you will see this horrendous JSON code. If you're not technical, you may be a little bit overwhelmed by this, but don't worry too much about it. I'll show you exactly how to actually get this. But before this, let me actually explain what this is, because it might look so overwhelming. All this is, from here to here, all the way down, this is nothing more than the code representation of the carousel. So remember when I press start and you can see two images, you can see a carousel here. This, the code within the action body, is literally just the code form of the carousel, or the carousel in JSON format, because in the backend, it doesn't understand what a carousel is. So you need to actually tell the backend like what form or what code the carousel takes. And this is the code form the carousel takes. And how do you actually achieve this? Well, it's actually quite simple. If you go to right click on the website and you click inspect, you will see basically all the HTML code of the website. Now, if you literally just click start, which starts the dynamic carousel, and if you refresh the website, you need to go to network, which is here. Yeah. And you will need to type something called interact within the filter. Why are we doing this? Well, because if you think about it, in Voiceflow, this is the front end that you see. This card, this block is the front end that we usually see. But what actually is happening is that we're actually sending data from the user end to the backend of the Voiceflow server, right? So the way they communicate is through endpoints in networks. And the interact endpoint is where, as you would have guessed, the front end of Voiceflow interact with the backend of Voiceflow, right? This is why we use the interact endpoint. Now, if we just click on this and go to response, the reason we choose response is because we actually want the data that's responding from the Voiceflow server back to us, right? So when we press start in the Voiceflow website, we send a request to the Voiceflow backend server, and the Voiceflow backend server sends a response back to us so we can see this dynamic carousel visually. This is what actually happens behind the scene, right? Now, if you scroll all the way down to payload, there you go. So as you can see payload here. So this is actually where the code form of the dynamic carousel comes from. So what I want you to do is just go on to the left. There's a little widget here. Click on the widget. It will collapse the entire code. All you need to do is drag the whole thing. Just literally select the whole thing. And then if you click on this little widget, you can see that the entire carousel code is selected. Well, what you need to do is right click and click copy. Now, after this, close the window and go back to your custom action. And in your action body, select JSON and paste this. Hopefully, I've explained it clear enough what this is. This is literally just the code form of the dynamic carousel. So you just copy it from the network inspection, you paste back the JSON code back to the custom action, and this is what the code form looks like. This is the second thing you need to understand. So we'll come back to this later. By the way, one little trick is that your name of your custom action has to name exactly the name that you give in the layout in small letters. So for example, the layout name is called carousel. Therefore, your custom action name should be named carousel. Remember, the C has to be small letter. Believe me, it takes me hours to just figure out why mine isn't working. And because mine was capitalized. I knew it has to be match. I knew it has to match the layout name, but I didn't know it has to be small letter. So that's what takes me like hours just to figure this out. But now you guys know. Okay. Now we actually want to go back to the dynamic carousel part. So if we just unlink this, and I should go back to the main workflow. So as with any greetings, before I do anything, I want to show you guys how it works. So if I just click run. Welcome to Venom. So there will be greeting message. Welcome to Venom. Please ask us any questions you have about our product, or you can tell me what you want to see. Okay, I want some MMA short. We're just waiting for the chatbot to respond. It's thinking at the moment. Okay, so next I want to show you guys the actual dynamic carousel template. It's a very simple template that could do a very simple product recommendation. Let me just run this so you guys see what's happening. Welcome to Fandom. Please ask us any questions you have about our product. You can tell me what you want to see. I want some MMA shorts. Now, it's going to go ahead and recommend me some MMA shorts from the Airtable that we have. As you can see, the carousel here, and it basically says, consider the Fandom hierarchy in MMA shorts, basically it's a short description. So this is just to show you guys what it does. So it's a very simple product recommendation function. So let me just go back and actually explains to you what's happening. So I've gone ahead and basically manually add these products into the Airtable called Fandom. So if I go to the winter sales page and I literally just select some random products and I just put the product name, price, how much it costs, the product type, description, product link, and the product image URL, which you can find by just, if you select one of these, you just right click, copy image address, and you can just paste it here. There's a way to automate this process so you don't actually have to manually do this all the time, which I'm going to show you later, how you can essentially automating your knowledge base in Voiceflow. I've done a video where it will automatically update your Voiceflow knowledge base whenever the Airtable gets updated. The link in the video is in the description. You can find this here. I'll show you in a sec where if you don't use Airtable, well, how can you automatically update your knowledge base in Voiceflow when new products are being added? I'm going to show you later in this video, but for now, let's just stick with this. This is a manually constructed Airtable database. And now what we want to do, right, is we want the AI to be able to recommend the product with the relevant product image and also the description and also the price and also the product name, right? That's what we want. We want the AI to be able to pick among these products, which product is most relevant to the user's query. So in order to do that, we start off by basically doing the greeting block, right? It's nothing special. And then I just save the user reply to last utterance, very standard. And it will go through 5 steps, but let's break it down one by one. The first step we want is that once we receive the query from the users, we kind of want the AI to be able to search the Airtable records, and retrieve the relevant product information, right? So this is what the first block does. So the AI actually creates an Airtable query. We will basically prompt an AI to be able to generate Airtable query or Airtable formula in order to retrieve the relevant records within Airtable. It's kind of like SQL, if you know what SQL is. It's basically a way to query a database, but this time in Airtable. And then once we have the Airtable query, once we ask the AI to create the Airtable formula, we're going to send the Airtable query through a post API request to the Airtable and actually get the records themselves. So this is done through an API request and save the variable locally to Voiceflow. The third step, once we receive the relevant record information, the product information, is we send another Airtable query in order to generate the dynamic carousel that will be done through another post API request in a make.com workflow. So this is the actual dynamic carousel step where you use AI to, based on the Airtable query and also the records information that we get back, be able to generate the code. Remember when I said the custom action is like the code form of the dynamic carousel? This is what this step does. So step 3 will mean that the AI will be able to generate the code form, the JSON code of the dynamic carousel. And once it does, it will pass on to the custom action step, which will contain the actual JSON code for the dynamic carousel. Once it's done, because this would just literally output the actual carousel, we want kind of like a description or a summary of the product recommendation step. It will then send off to step 5, which is convert to English to provide a summary, which we then use AI to basically summarize the entire product recommendation process. After the summary is done, it's basically finished. So that's the overall view of what we're actually building today. So hopefully this makes sense. Let's actually go ahead and see how we built it. Within the first build, we basically use a set variable block. Remember guys, just a side note, we don't use response AI and set AI anymore. These are being replaced. So do not use these 2 blocks. If you have these 2 blocks, please replace them. You can find this video or the link in the description where I talk about the latest Voiceflow update and which blocks you should be using instead of response AI and set AI. But basically, you should be using the set block, right? You drag the set block out and you basically select the variable select and you just select prompt, which is equivalent of the set AI step. So what I've done here is basically It's not even a set AI, it's just a set variable, which is I call a variable called available categories, which basically corresponds to the available product types in the Airtable. So we have training shorts, rash guard, boxing gloves, sports specs, etc. So these are all the available product categories. And we're doing the product recommendation based on the product type. Of course, you can easily extend it to, let's say, size, like extra large, large, medium, or you can do it by gender, like male, female. You can do more complicated things, but this is a very simple template. So we're just going to use product type as the filter. So I'm just go ahead and basically set the variable available categories to an array of the available categories that's available in the product table. So the thing you see here, the square bracket, this is just an array, which is, if you can think about it like a list, it's a list of available categories, but the proper name is called an array. That's a specific data structure that we're referring to. And we use a set variable, which is a set AI step, where we basically want to use the AI to produce us an Airtable query, which can be saved in the variable called Airtable query. So let's go ahead and see what the prompt looks like. This is the new prompt interface in case you haven't seen yet, but essentially, I've used a markdown format to make it a little bit more formal and say, you're an expert Airtable formula creator. Your role is to assist users by creating accurate Airtable filter formulas based on their questions and the provided categories. Focus on finding the relevant product types based on the user's queries. The task is to write an Airtable formula to find relevant categories of supplements that the user can benefit from based on the user's query. Use the provided list of available product types to determine the relevant products. Now, use the question last utterance, which is the variable that saves the user's query. And we basically have a specifics section, which basically says use the provided product types to intelligently create Airtable queries. Prioritize finding categories based on the topics mentioned in the user query. And if additional information is required to refine the search, request it from the user to make the query as relevant as possible. Now, I've added in this schema thing. You don't have to do this. I'm just putting this for safety. It basically allows the AI to understand what essentially the available column name is in the Airtable. So basically, the schema is just basically at the sub-level of the database. So basically, what it means is the structure of this Airtable. So this just basically provides the AI the knowledge of what the Airtable database actually looks like. Now, notes. Always ensure your Airtable queries are syntactically correct and logically structured to meet the user's request. Do not make assumptions about the user's need beyond what is explicitly stated inside the user's queries. Basically, you don't want the AI to start hallucinating. And do not wrap your queries in any other text, not even backticks. So because you want your queries to be in natural language, right? Well, your queries want it to be an actual formula is in code. You don't want it to be in quotation mark because they will mess up the entire automation process. Now, I just add this, take a deep breath and take it step by step. It's just an emotional prompting. Essentially, it's been shown that if we add that, it can improve the AI performance. And I just include the conversational history, which you can add here. And I just provide some field shot prompting as well, which is the user and agent. So like a Q&A examples. These are basically field shot prompting. So for example, the user say, I sweat a lot during training, need the top for that. And the Airtable formula would be if product type equals to this category, dry tech t-shirts, then output dry tech t-shirts. Otherwise, output nothing. So what it means is that whenever you see the user saying you need the top, that I don't know if you know, like in sports, there are certain like dry tech t-shirts where like when you sweat a lot, the sweat will evaporate into air. It's like a technology that designed for like people who sweat a lot during sports. So this specific formula then basically recommend them dry tech t-shirts because it's basically saying if the product type is dry tech t-shirts, output dry tech t-shirts. If not, output nothing, right? And you can see the examples here. And the variables that I use is GPT-4o because this is a complicated thing because in general does not have a knowledge about Airtable formula. That's why we need to use a little bit more advanced model. And there's so much examples here because AI in general is very good at SQL. It's very good at SQL, but it's very bad at understanding Airtable formulas simply because it has not seen many Airtable formulas before. So that's why we kind of want to use the best model, which is GPT-4o, and you set the temperature to around 0.3, max tokens around 256. So this will be the set AI prompt for the Airtable formula creator that will automatically create an Airtable query based on the user's English query. Now, this is the first step, and we just send over the Airtable query to the second step, which is a post API request to a make.com workflow to basically retrieve the records from Airtable. So the way to do that is a very standard post API block. You basically need to set up a make.com workflow, which already did here. So what you do is you want to set up a custom webhook, and you want to copy the webhook address and paste it in here. Now, you don't need to do anything about headers and parameters. And for the body, I want you to think about this as the input to the make.com workflow. And obviously, we want to input the query for the make.com workflow to be able to output the actual product data information, right? That the Airtable query is trying to retrieve. So what we do here is the key, you can call it whatever you want. It's basically just naming the variable so that we know. I call this Airtable formula, and the value will be the variable Airtable query. So if you know a little bit of computer science beforehand, this is just a dictionary. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It's basically just a key value pair, but it's basically just a way for you to know what this does. So this is the input, and the capture response within the API block will basically ask the make.com to capture a response back to us in Voiceflow, which we want because the whole point of this is we want in Voiceflow, we want to input the Airtable query to the make.com for us to be able to see the relevant product information that's output from the make.com workflow, right? So we would definitely need to capture that specific response from make.com. So we basically name this object response and save this to a variable called Airtable response. And after we save this variable to Airtable response, then we pass it to the block where it's another set variable. Now, for those of you who doesn't know, the variable Airtable response you get back from make.com is going to be in a JSON format. Now, JSON is actually what we call an object. An object is a very specific data type in computer science that's very hard to work with. It's an object. You don't want to work with an object in general. You want to transform it into a data type that we can actually work with and pass it on a different workflow. So an example would be string. Another example would be float, which means decimal. Another example would be integer, for example. You want to work with these data types, but you don't want to work with object because the object is an abstract data type that you can't really work with. So what we've done here is once we've got the Airtable response from the make.com workflow, which would be an object format, which would be in a JSON object format, we want to turn the object into something that we can work with, which is string. So in the expression here, I just type JSON.stringify bracket the variable Airtable response. What it does, it turns the object, JSON object, into string. So this is a trick that you guys probably should know if you used to make.com workflow before. So let me go ahead and go to the first make.com workflow so you guys know what's going on. So as I explained before, you've got a webhook basically to take in the Airtable query from Voiceflow, the Airtable query. And in here, it then passes on that Airtable query into basically, which we call Airtable formula, is the Airtable query, right? We basically pass that query into a module called Airtable search records. Now, all you need to do is to input your personal access token within Airtable and access the base and table that you have, which is Venom table 1, right? So, and then you want to select grid view. This is simply how the Airtable looks like, which is in grid view. And you want to select basically all the output fields, which is all the columns that we have within the Airtable. Now, in formula, we want to input the Airtable formula here. Well, the reason why we want to do that is because, well, that's the Airtable query, right? So what this Airtable module does is it basically takes in the Airtable query and, as the name suggests, search the relevant records. So once it's done, once it passes through this module, you can see that it outputs different bundles. You can see the output. It outputs basically the relevant product information, the product name, price, product type, description, etc. So this is exactly what we want, because we need this information in order to construct our own dynamic carousel. So the problem though with these is because remember in our database, we basically have two MMA shorts. That means that we will have two different bundles. So one bundle corresponds to one product information that's been extracted back. It's very hard to work with. It is possible, but now you basically have two JSON objects. And in Voiceflow, the variable Airtable response is only really supported for one JSON object. So in order to make from two JSON objects into one JSON object, what you need to do is something called array aggregator. So an array aggregator module, you can just add a module and then you just click array, and then you can just click this array aggregator module. Right. So what it does is essentially it combines two JSON objects together into one big array, which is one big JSON code, right? So what you want to do is you just select source module. You want to select Airtable search records, which is the previous modules, and you don't need to worry about target structure type. And then you select all the fields that are not Airtable formula, because you don't want to output back the Airtable query, right? That's what the input is. We don't want to output the input. So we're going to just output all the relevant columns or fields from the Airtable that we have. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And we're just going to click save. So now we have one long array of JSON code. We are now ready to put it back into Voiceflow through a module called Webhook Response. So Webhook Response, all it does is transfer data back from Make.com into Voiceflow. So 200, so if you didn't know, status 200 means that it's been successfully transferred. And within the body, there is basically an array. Right, we basically want to transfer back the array, which is the long list of JSON object that we have, back into Voiceflow. So hopefully this Make.com workflow makes sense to you guys. Okay, so we're back to Voiceflow. Now we have this Airtable response that we get from Voiceflow, which is a long array of JSON information. We then pass over the JSON stringify to convert the data type into string. Then we are happy to move to the third module, which is send Airtable query, or send an Airtable response more. Rather, it should be Airtable response. So let me just quickly change that. Airtable response to generate the dynamic carousels. Again, we're going to use AI, but because this is more complicated, as you can see, like being able to ask AI to generate a code like this from the product information alone, it's not an easy step. Well, you can technically use that in Voiceflow doing a prompt step, which is you asking AI to do it. It's actually easier to do this in Make.com because of the specific modules called prompt completion module that you have access to. So instead of doing this in Voiceflow, I opt to do it in Make.com. What we did again is sending another API post request to Make.com to an AI module that can dynamically create this carousel. Again, everything basically stays the same. We don't need headers or parameters. We do need to change the body to Airtable response, which is the string, basically this string of product information that we've got back. And the value would just be, well, the variable name. And again, we want to capture the response back because we actually want the Make.com to output back the actual dynamic carousel JSON code to us in Voiceflow, so we can turn the code into an actual carousel. So that's why we have used the capture response. We need to put in the capture response and name it response. But the actual variable, we just save it to a variable called dynamic carousel. I hope this makes sense. So let's actually go to Make.com and actually inspect the second workflow. So we are at Make.com. It's actually a really simple step. Again, it uses the Webhook module, Webhook response settings, a very simple template. So what it does, again, you can basically have a custom webhook that receives information from Voiceflow. It then passes the information, which is the Airtable response, which is this string of product information that we've just got back. And we just input this Airtable response into an OpenAI create a completion or prompt module. So what you do is you go to OpenAI and you would just click this create a completion prompt module, create a completion for prompt or for chat. So the reason why I choose this over doing this in Voiceflow is because everything is so much clearer and so much structured within this OpenAI create a completion module. It makes sense to do it here just to make you guys see where everything is supposed to Voiceflow, where just one big chunk of prompt. Where in here, you can define different roles that the prompt can take, and it just makes everything super clear. And it also improves the performance as well if you can very clearly prompt the AI. So go ahead and select create the completion, GPT and OM models. And I choose the GPT-4os, although technically you can get away with 4 mini, but I'm just trying to be safe here. And the first one you want to do, as with any prompt in prompt engineering, is what we call the system prompt, which is how the AI should think. So I just go ahead and come up with a simple prompt. I'm pretty sure you guys can extend and build upon this. It basically said, you are an expert JSON formatter. Only output JSON formatted data. You should only output the cards for the number of input products that you're given based on the following JSON structure example that represents a carousel with 2 cards. Generate a new JSON carousel to render the cards from the following API response. So essentially, you're giving them all the information that you need further down the line from below for them to make the decision. But this is just the instructions that you're giving to the model. Generate a JSON carousel based on this structure from the following API response. You can create up to 10 cards. Never add an explanation to your answer. Always return only JSON as your answer. So this is a bit of a note or specifics that basically really make it clear that they should only output a JSON formula for the dynamic carousel and nothing else. And if you know prompt engineering, the AI listens to the prompt most in the beginning and the end. And in the middle is it can get a little bit lost. It's actually called lost in the middle. You can Google it up if you want. It's called lost in the middle effect. It's a prompt engineering trick where the most important things should be mentioned in the beginning and in the end of a prompt. And now in the message queue where we have the user prompt. Now in the user prompt, we're basically going to produce the string, which is the input, which is what we give to the AI. And in this case, it will be the large string of the product information that we just got from Airtable response, right? So this is the large string of the product information. And now we have message 3, which is assistant. So I want you to think about assistant as a context block, or more like an example block for the AI to kind of reference from. So it's like telling the AI, hey, this is what the ideal output should look like. So try to copy this style. In here, you can see an example of what the carousel JSON code looks like. So it's like a template for the AI to kind of copy and follow the style of. And finally, we go back to the user and we basically say, take the input as the Airtable response. So hopefully that chat completion makes sense. So we have the system prompt. We have the user prompt providing the context, which is the string of the product information. We have the assistant prompt, which is like a template or example for the AI to learn and copy from, which is the ideal output. And the actual input that the AI should use is Airtable response, the variable Airtable response. And remember to set 12800 tokens as the max completion tokens, because that's the max completion tokens for full GPT-4o. So if we just click save, and after the AI does its job, it should ideally output the carousel code, as you can see here from the output. You can see the result, which is the carousel code. And we want to pass this code back to us within Voiceflow so we can actually transform this code from JSON code into an actual visual carousel. So that's why we use a webhook response to capture this information, 200, and we capture the results, right? The result, if you just literally drag the result from here into the body, it will capture the results. And the content type should be application JSON, just to let Voiceflow know that we are passing back JSON data, essentially, not string. Hopefully this makes sense for the second Make.com workflow. Again, it's quite an easy workflow. And if we now go back to dynamic carousel, so this is where we are. So this is basically where we set up a capture response, where the second Make.com workflow inputs to us back the dynamic carousel code. And again, we're doing the same thing where we set dynamic carousel to a string, because right now it's a JSON object that's being outputted from the Make.com workflow. We want to transform JSON object to string. So we do JSON.stringify dynamic carousel. Now, once we have set and replace dynamic carousel to the string, and now once we have the string, we can then very easily within custom action, to transform the code from a JSON format into a format that's visible to the user. So what we want to do here is actually just name dynamic carousel, which is basically the variable that we use to save the carousel JSON code. And you want to click on default path, and you will want to turn on use global listen. And you will want to name, obviously, the name the same as the carousel name, which is carousel. Now, once the carousel is being outputted, you basically want the AI to describe a summary of what it's just done. So basically tell the users in text form, hey, this is a summary of the product recommendation. This is why we've chosen this specific product, right? So we call it convert to English, but more as like a summary. And we just use a set step where we use a set AI step where we save it to a variable called natural language response. So let me just show you guys the prompt for product recommendation. So you're an expert. This is a simpler prompt, but you guys can extend upon it. You're an expert e-commerce product recommendation assistant. Your role is to provide concise, relevant product suggestions based on the user's query without unnecessary follow-up questions. Because basically the reason why is because if we don't add that, and then the customer goes to the AI, and let's say like I want MMA shorts, and then the Chatbot will basically reply with the images, but then it will basically ask you, are there any specific MMA shorts you want? But obviously this is a template, right? We haven't set up the AI to be able to answer this yet. So that's why we added this for this specific template. But for your use case, obviously you want to delete that. You want to be as specific as possible. So it's up to you to kind of take this and kind of creatively apply it to your situation. And specifics is prioritize products that are most aligned. Thank you, Grammarly, with the user's need. Summarize each product briefly, focusing on how it addresses the user's use case. Respond in 3 sentences maximum, avoid hyperbole or extensive detail. Do not reference JSON data. And if the query lacks clarity, summarize available options instead of asking for more information. Maintain a smarter tone, be direct and conversational, focus on delivering value efficiently. And we've just added in the conversational history, so the AI has reference to, and obviously last utterance, which is the user's query. Now in settings, we can use a 4 mini because this is quite a simple job, and we didn't really change the temperature and the max tokens. So this is quite an easy prompt to do. And after this, the AI should be able to respond basically the summary of the product recommendation in English and basically output it back to the user, and the user can type something and it would just repeat the entire product recommendation process like a loop. I hope this makes sense. I know this has been quite a long explanation so far, but I try to break it down for you guys so that you guys know exactly why we're doing this and what is happening behind the scene. It's so important that you guys understand what's going on behind the scene, because I can guarantee you it's going to help you so much if you actually take what I've just explained to you and apply it to your use case. I think it's super important that you guys understand the why, but not just the how. Anyway, this is the fundamentals behind dynamic carousels and product recommendation. Now let's actually head to Shopify and actually see practically how we can implement this in your Shopify store. I'll see you in the next one. Okay, guys, so we are in Shopify at the moment, and I'm actually going to show you how you can practically do it, because what we've done so far is explain to you the fundamentals of how it works behind the scene and how the actual logic works. But in reality, we don't actually use that too much, because there's actually a template that Voiceflow has actually provided, or rather Shopify or Voiceflow, one of them, has provided, that you can just use straight away out of the box. And it saves you so much time that you can actually do it in under 20 minutes, as opposed to actually doing the whole development process. So let me actually show you how it's all done. So if you go to Shopify, the first thing you need to do is you actually need to import certain products, which I have already done for the fandom database. But for you guys, what you actually want to do is you go to import, click on import, and you would want to import the product CSV. So if you don't know what CSV is, CSV stands for comma separated file. So no, it's not file, but it's something else. But it's comma separated something. Sorry, I can't remember exactly what it is. But it's basically a specific data file that you can save from Excel into CSV. So the way that they function is there's a very specific CSV template that you need to use. And what you want to do is you click download sample CSV. And once you finish downloading the product template, you can actually just open the template CSV. So I'm using Mac, which has numbers, which is not Excel. But if you're using Windows, it should be in Excel format. So I can see here it has handle, title, body, HTML, vendor, product category, type, tags, etc. So you would want to fill that in as from your Airtable. But a way to do it myself is actually just literally plug this whole thing into an AI model like Gemini or ChatGPT if you want, and actually just ask ChatGPT to format the CSV file that you have from Airtable and format the CSV file into the template, which you can also upload into ChatGPT because you can attach files in ChatGPT, right? So here's actually how you do it, and you can close that now. And after you add this file, it should then go ahead and import all the products in Shopify. Now, what you want to do in order to embed the Voiceflow chatbot into Shopify is you actually need to go ahead and go to code. So if you actually want to go to, okay, so as you can see here, this is the online store. And from here, you can choose like different themes, but I'm not going to walk through that. I'm just going to take you through how you can embed the widget within the website. So what you can do is click on those three dots, and then you can click on edit code. Now, once you're in, it might feel overwhelming, but this is just HTML, which is actually not something that you need to worry about at the moment. All I want you to know is be able to embed the widgets within HTML, within the website. Basically, it's very simple things that you can do. So if you go back to Voiceflow, this is actually the template that I mentioned, the Voiceflow Shopify template that you can just use straight out of the box and actually plug it into your own Shopify store. So what you can do is if you go back and then you click on integration, and you can see the widget here, right? You can see this is basically the HTML code in order to embed the template. So what you want to do is you click on this, copy, and confirm and copy code. Now, what you need to do, I've already done, is if you scroll all the way to a specific tag called the body tag. So if you scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, you need to scroll down a little bit. And eventually you'll find not this is not the body tag. A tag is something in a bracket like this. So this is a tag. So this is not a tag, right? There you go. You can see the body tag here. If you scroll down in the body tag, you will find a tag that's called script. Now, this is the Voiceflow widget script that I've already pasted. But what you want to do is literally go to script and then you just paste the code, right? That you just copy from Voiceflow. This is the first thing you need to do. But then the second thing that you need to do, most people don't know this. What you need to do is you go back up and you want to paste this line of code. So what it does is it actually changes the visibility and the opacity of the widget. So why can't you see the widget in the Shopify store right now if you don't have this specific line of code? It's because by default, the visibility is set to 0, which means that if you're a normal user on your website, you can't actually see the widget. So you would need to paste this line of code. So within the Voiceflow chat, you change display to block not important, visibility visible not important, and within opacity, you set it to 1, meaning opacity just means how well you can see a certain thing. So 0 meaning you can't see anything. 1 meaning you can see everything really clearly. That was very easy, relatively simple of how you can actually implement the widget itself into your Shopify store. But let's go back to this template. What is this template, you may ask? So it is actually a really comprehensive template made by Voiceflow that you can just download the template and you can play around with it, change it to your own settings, and you can literally put it up into your Voiceflow in 20 minutes. So I'm going to walk you through the basics that you need to know. The template is in the link in the description. So you can just copy and download the file, the Voiceflow file, and immediately plug it and play around with it and plug it into your Shopify store. So you've got this homepage here, which basically say, hello, welcome to Voiceflow AI support agent. So if I just run this, right? How can we help you today? And you have a few options to choose from. You can choose from order status. So basically what it does is order tracking. So if you have an order in your Shopify store, so if you go back, leave page, if you go back to orders, now I'm on the free plan at the moment, but if you actually have a proper Shopify store, you can actually see your order tracking here. So what this does is order status is essentially going to track your order status and basically let you know, hey, how's my order? Has it arrived yet or not? And then you get a recommendation, which is essentially what we've been doing up to this point in the video, is to get a product recommendation based on the user's query. And store policies and FAQs is basically if you have any questions about the Shopify store, you can go ask about information in general. And contact support, basically you just want to speak to a human team. And your reward program, we're not going to cover that. It's too niche, like we don't really need that at the moment. If you go back and you click on order status, you see the whole workflow here. Now you can read it in your own time here, but I'm just going to explain to you what you need to do. So if you go to order status, this is basically a component. And then you go to order intro, let's see what your order is. To check your order status, we'll need to email your order. So if I just run this, I'll just do your email. And then you just need to enter the email, right? So let's say 123@gmail.com. Then this is where the key magic happens. Let it run through first, and then we'll see what happens. Of course, like it said, let's take a look. Oh no, it looks like we couldn't find the email. Of course, because we don't have any orders here. So of course it doesn't work. But I want to explain a little bit about this specific block. So this is what retrieve order information uses an external app called Streamline Connector. Now, Streamline Connector is actually a really automation app for automating Voiceflow functions to your Shopify store. And it saves you so much time in writing your own function. And what you need to do in order to get the Streamline Connector, you just need to go to apps and then just click Streamline Connector Voiceflow. Now, I've already installed it. So you can go ahead and install it. You can basically install it from there. And then you basically click Add System. And you can add your Voiceflow API key here and just name your chatbot here, XYZ, for example. And then you can just click Connect. So within these specific Voiceflow agent, you can just click on Manage Data. And from here, you can basically check your assistant knowledge base, this is essentially the product data which we're going to go into in a second. But for order tracking, you can only send 10 products on the free plan, but you can also send order from here. So you can click Send Order Endpoint, and you can just copy this endpoint here. And if you go back to the template, and then you have something called Input Variable Mapping, and you can literally just copy and paste the endpoint URL that you just copied from the Streamline Connector app into your Voiceflow template. That's the only change that you need to make from the template. Now, I want to explain a little bit. This is what we call a custom function in Voiceflow. Functions is something that takes an input, does some operation, and makes an output. What it actually does is you use an input variable mapping where you take in link of your input variable, save it into a variable called request URL, and you use the customer email, which we have just entered into a variable called email. It then does some function, some code, and then it output the mapping. I'm not going to show you guys the code. You can look at it yourself. If you really want to know what's going on, you can click back, and then you click on functions, and then you click on retrieve streamline order, which is the order status. This will be the actual function. This is what's actually happening behind the scene of this custom function. And custom function is something that you can just write in your own time. If you have developer background, if you're a technical person, you can write your own function, JavaScript here. But for non-technical audience, I don't recommend you go straight into custom function. Just use the function as it is. It will work fine. So if you go back to the order status, it goes through the Streamline Connector. It basically takes the email and the request URL, and it will basically output Now, the next thing I do want to go into is product recommendation, because this is essentially what we did in the last chapter. But this is basically a template that's already built up for you. So you don't need to do all those make.com, workflow, webhooks, and all that stuff. It's all done in the box. So if you go to product recommendation, it would say, would you like to see, let me just run this very quickly. It will go through the clarified user intent case, which is, would you like to see a bestsellers or get a personalized recommendation? Of course, if you click bestseller, it's going to go through this dynamic carousel of cards of your bestsellers. But obviously, you need to change these to your own products or your own use cases. But let's say I want to do personalized recommendations. and it will go through this block, which basically say, hey, okay, tell us which fandom gear you're looking for. Be as detailed as possible. For example, do you have any lightweight hoodies for layering? And then we'll capture the user reply to user question. So let's say I want some MMA short, and then we'll go through another custom function called find products and create carousel. I will explain to you what it does. So it goes through the custom function, did the thing. The custom function basically did the personalized recommendation, and then it goes through an AI step, which basically generates a dynamic carousel. As you can see here, the reason why it said out of stock is because, well, I didn't actually set up my Shopify store properly because I didn't change the inventory count. So it will say out of stock here, but this is basically a dynamic carousel. And then basically say, I hope you like your recommendation, etc. So it basically does the same thing that we've been doing, but this is more streamlined. But let me actually break it down a little bit about what it does. So what we did in the last chapter was we sent an API request to make.com and to basically retrieve Airtable records, right? But the way that we do that now is actually we do it directly in Voiceflow by inserting those product records directly into the Voiceflow knowledge base. So from here, you can see knowledge. If you just click on here, we see available products. So how you actually do that is, again, using the Streamline Connector app. So if you go back to the Streamline Connector app, you have something called Assistant Knowledge Base. I've already added it, but what you can do is you go to Send, and you go to Send Products static file. Now, from here, you can basically just say the name of your Assistant Knowledge Base, and you can just click Select All Active Products. You can basically select your searchable fields and your meta fields. So what are searchable fields? Well, searchable fields are basically the columns in your Airtable database that the AI can have access to. So remember in the last chapter when we're asking the AI to look for the right product information based on the category, right? It's based on the product type, which is a searchable field because the AI can scan the information within these data columns in Airtable. So in here, we want the AI to be able to read the title and the description, and based on the description to give us back a personalized recommendation, in our case, MMA shorts. But if you scroll down, this is basically a non-searchable field. So non-searchable fields or massive data fields are basically data that is still there, but it's not being looked at by the AI. Don't worry too much about this, just stick as it is. And from here, a text for the AI, just stick as it is, product data, and you will just click confirm and save. And after you save that, the Streamline Connector app will directly create an assistant knowledge base called Available Product One that directly links your product data records from Airtable into the Voiceflow knowledge base. Now, once you have the knowledge base, right, then it's become very easy for Voiceflow to do basically a database search, a knowledge-based search, essentially. But in this case, it's a custom function. So what this custom function does is it takes in the Voiceflow API key and the user's query, and it then do a search through the knowledge base. Now you can see here, get chunks. So what chunks actually are is that within your knowledge base, if I just go back to the knowledge base and click on available products, chunks of the entire knowledge base being breaking down into pieces, right? So each piece recommends a different product. Now, how the custom function works in the product recommendation is as follows. It's basically in a high level is you take in the user's query and it basically search through the knowledge base of the different chunks, and it basically find the chunks that are most similar to the user's query, that are most relevant to the user's query. For those who are a little bit more technical, it's actually just RAG. So if you don't know what RAG is, it's just retrieve augmented generation. So what it does is basically do a vector search. So your knowledge base, imagine your knowledge base is like a vector field. And what this function does is based on the user's query, it will transform the user's query into a vector, which is a mathematical object. And it will compare the similarity between the user's query vector and the vector of these knowledge-based chunks and find the vector that's most relevant or most similar to the user's query vector. It will output a score and output the chunk that is most relevant to the user's query and output it in a payload format. This is what a custom function does. I'm sorry if it's a little bit confusing for non-technical people, but you don't need to worry too much about it. All you need to do is just practically input the Voiceflow API key. Now, from this custom function, you can go back into create recommendation, which is a response AI step. Now, this is an old template. So what you should do is you should replace this response AI. You shouldn't really be using response AI or set AI because they're being deprecated. What you should do is if you go to talk and use the prompt step instead. I made a video, link in the description, where I've broken down the differences between the prompt step and response AI, but you will want to replace this response AI with the prompt step, but you can just copy and paste the prompt here. So what it does is your task is to provide tailored product recommendation based on the customer's specific question and product list below. And if you look at the system prompt, right, you are a Phantom Combat Tops clothing expert tasked to recommend products for the brand event. So I think by this point, you guys should know what this is the AI step is going to retrieve the chunk, the product that's most relevant to user's query, and output the dynamic carousel, which you have done, as you can see in the custom action step, as we have done in the previous chapter, exactly the same way. This is just a little bit more formal and a little bit less work on our end because we don't need to set up the different webhooks to the make.com workflow. You can just do this within Voiceflow using the Voiceflow knowledge base. So yeah, this is the product recommendation step within Voiceflow. The reason why I kind of started the previous chapter is because just to let you guys understand what's really happening behind the scene, right? To give you guys a taste of what it actually is, the logic behind the scene. So hopefully that helps. For the policies, I'm not going to go over this in detail, but essentially it's a very simple knowledge-based search. You have a knowledge base of the AI policies, and you do basically an FAQ question answering using the knowledge base. Again, you shouldn't be using response AI. You should be basically using the knowledge base search step, and you're basically using knowledge base search step, and then you basically use a prompt step after the knowledge base step. So this is essentially the same as the AI response AI knowledge base step, but you guys can change it yourself. Like you literally just copy and paste everything and put it back into this block. So this is it for me, guys, for today. I hope that makes sense. I hope it wasn't too confusing when I was explaining RAG, but it also hopefully gives you a taste of what this template can do and what you can do with Voiceflow within the e-commerce store. So hopefully this helps you guys. And if you want more long tutorials like this, let me know in the comments. And if you like this type of content, remember to like and subscribe. I try to do them every week or every 2 weeks just to make you guys a really long form video that you guys can enjoy and learn from it at the same time. That's it from me, guys. Have a good one. And before you go, watch this. My name is Edwin. I'm the founder of Legacy AI, alongside my friend Champion here. That's his real name, by the way. And together we offer voice-based and text-based AI solutions like the one you're seeing in this video to other businesses to help them save hours and hours of time and thousands of dollars spent on manual service tasks such as appointment scheduling, CRM integration, lead generation, etc. And if you're a business owner and you're interested to see how these AI solutions can help transform your business and improve your bottom line, follow the link in the description to book a free consultation call with us today. Anyway, back to the video.